pump it up, yo, pump it. Y'all ready for this?
Who's gonna bust my chops, man?
By the way, happy belated birthday to you once again.
Yeah,
What
thank
do you know? What do you know? You're 44 years old, is that correct?
44, man.
44.
44.
Wow.
Yep,
Backwards or forwards, you're still 44.
I am. Yeah.
Backwards or forwards.
Boom. Boom.
44.
Boom. 44.
Awesome.
What do you know?
I feel 64.
Feel 64?
No,
If you fall, you can't get up. Is that what you're saying?
I'm always getting up. I always fall, but I always get up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, welcome everybody. Once again, we are back for another round table discussion. Talk about what do you know or what do you don't know.
Yes.
What do you think about that, Michael?
I like it. I like it. Yeah. The best thing about it is that it opens it up to, just about any topic you can think of.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, it's interesting when we do these topics. We're always trying to figure out things we know or don't know. There's just so much, but it's always hard trying to pin down a good conversation. Which brings us to what we're going to talk about today, which is going to be what do you know? And it's going to be focusing more about with regard to lack of communication causes problems. Because when you don't know something, how can you actually solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is? Whether you're working with a buyer, you don't know what their problem is until you ask questions because you don't know. What do I know is that I may have a solution if you tell me about the problem. So it all comes back to talking about lack of communication causes problems, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's in your real estate transaction, whether it's with your relationships, your kids. There's just so many things that goes on when you don't have that communication part or lack of communication. So we're going to sit up here and have a little roundtable discussion, talk about what do you know, what do you don't know, and what should you know with regard to helping you become a better communicator. What do you think?
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
Just like with anything, right? On the circuit, whatever the case might be, a disconnect in the process is going to create issues.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can't get to the other side if there's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
No, I think I love the intro.
Okay.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
You sure can jump in, please. Jump in first.
So the biggest thing, and I want you guys to elaborate on this, but because typically, if somebody goes to buy a home and they talk to an agent, you guys are going to refer them to the lender, right?
Correct.
Say, hey, find out where you're at financially. We discussed that on a previous episode here. Find out where you're at financially, and then we'll know where you're going, where you can get to. The biggest issue that I see with buyers coming from a referral source like you guys, or even if just somebody coming random from a referral from a friend or whoever, the biggest issue that I see is they don't disclose the information that I need to get them in the right position to be able to purchase a home. And it's critical because a lot of times I think some people think well, I'm not going to tell the lender.
Yeah, and it's all going to come out.
The one thing I want to be clear on
is,
and that's I think that's a mindset. A lot of people have that. I won't tell the lender. It will come out. Eventually. And the last thing you want to do as a buyer is wasting your time, wasting my time, wasting their own time.
Yeah.
It's the bottom line.
If you truly want to buy a house,
So, getting to discussing information with a lender up front, if you're talking to me on a one-on-one basis, we're not always on the record. We can discuss things that may be issues, may know how to help resolve the issue. But definitely tell the lender, tell the agents up front, tell you guys what issues that you see that could be obstacles through the process. We have to know that information.
I agree with you 150%.
Yeah.
Anybody who knows me, knows that I'm a very direct individual. Sometimes to a fault. Matter of fact, I think you call me a bulldog. Which
pit bull.
Could be a positive, could be a
pit
negative.
bull in a squeaky toy.
Well, let's think about that pit bull though. Who do you want fighting for you or negotiating on your contract?
A pit bull.
Well, you want a pit bull, right?
Pit bull.
Let me at him. What I was getting to though is I agree with you 110%. one of the things that I like to do when it comes to communication, since that's the topic of the day, right, is I like to have everything right here, man, right here. And what I mean by right here is I like to have it out in front. Because if it's out in front, then we all know about it, right? So we can all work together to resolve that and get past that. But if I have it back here somewhere, man, you don't know about it, you don't know about it. So then what happens? What happens if I slip and fall or something happens in the process and now it's exposed out of nowhere? Now I'm tripped up. And hopefully it's not late in the process. We've had a deal, earlier this year I want to say where, I won't go into detail, but I know we had a deal where we had something pop up late in the transaction that almost caused the deal not to go through. Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Fortunately for us, everybody was able to own up, be accountable, and then get everything out here in front of us. So they were able to communicate through that, right? And we got past it.
Let me make a comment on that. So that's a great example, but that's something that we had a solution.
Yes.
To the problem. We had a solution.
That's what we talked about.
We had a solution to the problem late in the process, which we didn't need to, and that created all kinds of stress for everybody.
Yeah.
And it was late in the process. We could have had that ironed out in the beginning of the process.
Lack of
and made
communication.
it so smooth.
This particular deal, we were already under contract. We were past the inspection period, the appraisal. Right? We were in the underwriting process.
1 week from closing.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
What happens? That's the nature of our business. Well, let's just back up for a second. Because we're talking about lack of communication. And one of the first things I would say where it starts at is set the table with regard to expectations up front. Okay? What I mean by that is when we start to engage with different people, and we're talking about trying to solve problems, it's our job to try to get information from you on what the problem is so we can provide a solution. You know, maybe the previous weeks we talked about surrounding yourself with good teams. I'm not an expert in the loan game. I'm not an expert with title. I'm not an attorney. I'm not this. I'm not a CPA. I'm not any of this stuff. But our job is because a lot of times for us as real estate agents, we're on the front line trying to figure out and ask questions.
Yes.
Because when you ask questions, you are communicating or you're able to communicate how you can solve those needs. And that's so crucial up front. So when we meet with people up front, we want to be able to ask questions to figure out what the problem is or what they're trying to accomplish so we can communicate with them on how we're going to solve that problem.
We're not being nosy.
No.
There's a season.
Not being nosy.
There's a method to the madness. There's a method. There's a reasoning.
And I think a lot of people that like buying, they're like, why do they need that information? Why do I have to give them that? Why do I have to tell them that?
Well, you know why? It's the reason why they're asking those questions because somebody in the process is not communicating why it's needed. Right. Once again, communication causes problems. Yep. And Brian, you always tell me this as well too. Lack of communication causes for a bad marriage. So my philosophy is if you've been married 5 times, you probably are not a very good communicator.
You got to work on your communication, man. Just saying, man.
Chances are,
you are a poor communicator.
A lot of times, if you're not communicating, don't blame the other person because you are in that fight as well too. So it's probably you that are a bad communicator. You need to figure out how to communicate the problems. You know what I mean? Or communicate what's going on.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about lack of communication and being able to solve problems, knowing everything you need to know. Okay? How can we solve a problem if the problem is not communicated with us?
And I love the fact that you brought up asking questions.
Oh, huge.
Not only is that a recurring theme from every one of our episodes so far, but even conversations that I've had with you from day one. I know that's something that you really hammered into, my thought process too, but it also leads into kind of my thought process on communication. When you're talking about communication or dealing with things or solving problems, you want to know the who, the what, the when, the why, the where. Well, those are questions, right?
Yeah.
So, that should be the starting point. Who do I need to communicate with? When do I need to communicate with them? What do I need to communicate? You're going to find out if you're asking why, and then, where is this going to happen? Those are just things that lead into generating questions, getting all the information out, so that way we're all on the same page, right? Because one of the takeaways that I'm going to have for here today is we don't know what we don't know. So unless it's put out there, unless it's, I guess in the terms of the industry, unless it's disclosed, right? And that's whether it's from an industry professional or from a client, it's got to be disclosed. We don't know what we don't know. Once we have it here, now we can start asking more questions. We can work on solving those problems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, you got to think about it this way too. We were talking about lack of communication, but you also got to make sure you understand one important point. You got to understand who you're communicating to.
Yeah.
Because we all have our different communication styles.
Yeah.
Some of us have that engineer mentality. We got to have the systems and processes down, and they only are going to listen if you talk in this way. Other people say, just give me the numbers, give me this. Yeah. I'm a straight shooter, and you have to be able to understand who you're communicating to, so you don't run into, because sometimes this just sounds like blah, 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 blah. If you're communicating to someone and you are not communicating on their level.
Match their speed.
You got to match their speed. You got to match their communication style. You got to deliver a content to them in a way which they can understand. And that's where you have to solve that problem. The sooner you could do that, I can say less and communicate more than saying a whole bunch and them not hearing anything. So communication style, asking questions, helps alleviate those problems you could run into. Because especially when you have moving parts, the easiest way to communicate is when you're just communicating with one person. How about if you're communicating to a husband and spouse that think differently?
Yeah.
You got to talk to them differently, because one person heard this, another person heard that, but they're not on the same page because of the lack of communication you're delivering to them.
It's true.
You know?
That's true.
Yeah, so it all comes back to communication. But when we look at the transaction, I'd say the biggest things we got to understand is that you have to be an effective communicator. And then sometimes people get scared to communicate because they don't know how to solve the problem.
Or it's a tough message, right?
Or it's a tough message.
Yeah.
What I would say that is, I don't have a problem communicating bad messages, but I better have a solution at the end of that conversation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just lose all credibility to begin with.
No.
I'm going to call you with the problem, and then you're going to go, what are you going to do about it? And I'm going to go, I don't know. I just lost all credibility.
Yep.
All
Next.
credibility.
Yep.
You know, and if you don't know the answer, don't lie.
Right.
Okay, just be honest. I'd rather be honest and sleep on it than have a bad answer to something I know was not true.
I absolutely agree 110%, man. One thing I would never want to make a practice is to deliver information that's bad information knowingly. I'm okay with not having all the answers, but I'll go find it. You know, but I'm going to let you know. Yeah, I don't have that answer. If you ask me a question, catch me off guard. But I'll go find it. Let's figure that out together. But
we all got to make sure that when we communicate, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Especially when you're working with your principal, your clients, your buyer, seller. Because a lot of times you see this happen a lot. I'm ready to wake up and find you a house, and I call you, but you're not ready to buy a house. Meaning that your time of your sense of urgency was not communicated with me on when you would like to be spending the first night in your new home.
Yeah.
So all these little aspects of communication comes full circle when you look at every aspect of how you interact with people, what by when, time frames, being fully disclosed on what you're trying to accomplish, and me asking enough questions so I can put a solution in place to solve it.
it comes along with that assumption, right? You assume the other person knows, and that
you should never assume.
creates.
You know what happens when you assume.
Absolutely, that's what I'm getting to. Don't steal my thunder here.
All right.
But in the beginning, in the beginning, we talked about that creates a disconnect. Well, when you assume somebody knows what you're thinking or what you want or what you know or what you're looking for, now you created a problem. And as you were just pointing out right now, if you break down that word, right, you make an ass out of you and me.
Oh.
Not 99 times out of 100, it's not so much the you part that I'm concerned with, it's the me part.
Yeah.
Hold on. But you can't assume. That's one of the worst things you can do.
Yeah. So when you talk about going through the process, or whether it's real estate or you're doing anything, communication is always going to be the bedrock or the foundation of every healthy relationship. Especially when you're talking about dealing with buyers and sellers. Because one of the biggest problems that people have with real estate agents, believe it or not, is the lack of communication. Them not answering their phone, as simple as answering your phone, is a form of communication. How can you cut that over?
I can understand if you're on the other line, you don't answer, we'll give them.
But you don't even call them back.
We'll give them that. But you don't call them back.
You don't call them back. You don't call them back.
Why?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Why?
Why? Because you don't have an answer to their problem, and therefore I've never seen somebody over communicate. Have you?
I've been accused of over communicating. I don't know.
I know, but that's what we should be trying to do all the time. We should be always trying to.
Guilty of that.
Yeah, over communicate. You should always be guilty of over communicating. How will somebody feel says you just gave me too much information? I don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
It's always you didn't give me enough information, and I can do this myself.
Right. You never told me that. You never told me this.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And a lot of times when I work with buyers and sellers, I said I'm going to tell you a lot of stuff, and I'm going to educate you in the process. A lot of the stuff I'm going to tell you may not come to fruition, but at least I told you about the things that could happen, so it won't be the first time you hear it if it does happen.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you're dealing with the type of market we're dealing with right now, a seller's market. If you're working with a seller and you're not communicating to your seller that the house may not appraise and what your options are until it doesn't appraise, and the seller's pissed off because now they got to take it in the shorts because the house sold for less, appraised for less. If that's the first time that you communicated that to them, shame on you.
Yep.
It's a bad deal.
You know, and it's funny because you'll talk to real estate agents all the time. I go, I hope you had a conversation with your seller. We'll pay for what you want, but did you have a conversation just in case it doesn't appraise?
Right.
And what their options are?
Right.
And it's an FHA loan. What does that mean to them going forward? That if it's an FHA loan, chances are you're not going FHA if you don't work with me. You know exactly what I'm talking about there.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. It happens all the time. So, lack of communication causes problems in every aspect. And then you got to remember when you're communicating with people, ask questions. How can you solve a problem if you're not communicating or asking the questions on what the pain points are to help people with the solution?
Right.
You got to do it.
I agree.
So like we said, we always try to bring value to these conversations, and communication is a very important aspect of every business, no matter whether you're in real estate, lending, your attorney, a doctor. Could you imagine if your doctor didn't communicate to you what was going on with your body? I'm just thinking off the cuff here. Would you fire that doctor?
I wouldn't be back, that's for sure, yeah.
Doctor tells you got 6 months to live, but he didn't tell you that. Can you imagine? That's the worst case scenario. But you know what?
That's like doing a purchase deal, and the buyer, and you're holding back information, and you're like, we'll just let that come up through underwriting. That's like, we'll just let it come up through surgery. Once you're in surgery,
Yeah.
we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out, right?
We'll figure it out then.
Yeah.
Or we'll let them know then, but they'll be unconscious.
Yeah.
It's the
Now
same thing.
you're
It's
in
the
a
same
compromised position, right?
Yeah.
And you're gonna make decisions that ordinarily you normally wouldn't make because you weren't prepared, right?
You know,
the process.
You know, I always get secrets out, right?
Oh, you're
Oh,
the
it was a
secret.
secret.
I know a secret.
What's the secret?
So, you can tell the lender and the agents everything up front because they're not underwriters.
Right.
Okay, tell us everything. You don't want to tell the underwriter if there's something that you're not sure of, and you wait till underwriting, and the underwriter finds out. That's it.
So you just
There's-
answered who, what,
Yeah.
when, why.
You can't back out at that point once the underwriter has the information. Okay, if we have the solution to whatever the problem is up front, then you're good.
And here's the thing on that is most of the time when somebody's holding something back like that, it's not as big as you think it is. You know,
Exactly.
More times than not, this is what we do on a
Simple
daily
solution.
basis. So
Yep.
we probably have seen it before and know how to resolve that problem.
Yep.
But because it's new to you doesn't mean that it's new to everyone else. So disclose, get it out there. We don't know what we don't know, but if you can get it in front of us, then we can help resolve it.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's a boulder to you, but it's a pebble to me.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what they don't know. So once again, what do you don't know? And just to think about this for a second, when it comes to liability and everything else, one of the biggest reasons why agents per se get in trouble a lot of time is failure to disclose things that will affect their buying decision.
Yeah.
Material facts, as we call it.
Yes.
Because they don't sell a lot of homes. They got a deal that's supposed to be closing on Friday. They want to close. They don't want to hold it up. So they fail to disclose or communicate things that a buyer or seller should know.
Yeah.
In the process of making the biggest financial decision of their lifetime. Blows my mind. Number one reason why agents get sued by people.
Wow.
Failure to disclose.
Yeah, that's not a good look, man.
That's not.
No.
So
At
what's
the end of the day, you gotta
that?
look yourself in the
What's
mirror.
that come down to? The title of our show: communication or lack
Yeah,
thereof.
lack of the
Lack of.
communication. You know what I mean? And in the process, we're talking about there's so many moving parts with regard to you have the buyer, you have the seller, you have the agents on both sides, you got the inspection company, you got the lender, you got the termite inspection, you got title, and then if you were dealing with certain other properties, you may have other type of things you have to do and communicate this as well too. Because one of the biggest reasons why a lot of deals fall out is one, probably because lack of communication on all party side. You know?
That's right.
So when we look at buying or working with the buyer or working with the seller, I'm looking at the other side of the transaction and the lender. Is that somebody I feel that it's going to communicate things that are going on in the transaction, what I should know and should disclose to my buyer or seller? Or is it going to be somebody that kind of pushes everything under the rug and hope that the underwriter doesn't catch it?
Not a good way to go.
That's not a good way.
Not a good way to go.
So lack of communication in every aspect, whether it's your professional life, your personal life, can cause problems.
Absolutely.
Learn who you're communicating with, ask questions, so that way you can put a problem or you can put a solution in front of them based upon if they're being honest with you.
And look, you know what, I'm just going to say one more thing.
Right.
If you're not comfortable with the person you're talking with, whether it's an agent or a lender, go find another one.
Yeah.
Go get somebody else.
Something else there.
How
Get
about,
somebody who you're
how about if
comfortable
you be like we do nowadays, just text them. Use an emoji telling your agent how you're feeling.
Nobody can have a face-to-face conversation anymore, right?
I feel like I can have this hard conversation because if they answer it, I'm going to have to talk. Maybe I should just text them.
Well, I don't know. That kind of helps out with what I was going to bring up too. Is it's something that we're forgetting about. Communication isn't just about speaking, though.
No.
The bigger piece of communication is listening on the other side of it. You know, because
Yeah.
you could be giving out some nuggets, right? But if that other person's not taking it in,
Some people only hear what they want to
you
hear.
know.
Yeah.
So
Well, you think about that aspect, they always say that 80% of communication is nonverbal.
Right.
So that means I can sit across in the room and tell what your problems are? No. But the point is, if you see something is bothering somebody, maybe you should communicate what's going on so you can ask the right question to put the solution to eliminate that problem or that stressor they're having at that time.
Yep.
All right. So with that being said, we've talked about communication. We were like over the place a little bit, but we do think this is a very relevant conversation in every aspect of our business. Okay. So like he says, we always try to bring value in this type of situation, and we always try to make sure we give you something to take away from it. Okay. So with that being said, Michael, like I said, we like to keep these short and sweet, so that way you watch it through the whole time, and that way you get some value out of it. What are we going to take away from this conversation about communication?
Well, to get to my takeaway, I'll get it started and maybe pass off to you, and I'll let you close because you're so good at it. But I like that we hit the asking the questions, right? The who, the when, the what, the why, to get to the problem. So that way we can identify, because we don't know what we don't know. The only way we're going to get that and get this information out in front of us so we can work together and get behind it is to communicate. That's, for me, my biggest takeaway is we don't know what we don't know. So ask the questions, man. Who should you be asking them? All these industry, professionals. Whether you're talking to who should you communicate with? I'm sorry, it's the lenders, the real estate agent, the inspector, all these guys that are associated with the transaction. As soon as you have the information, what should you bring it up? If you have to ask the question, should I bring this up? I'd probably bring it up. Why? Because it's important. More than likely, it's important. If it's not, then we can get past it.
There's no dumb questions for when you're buying a home. Some people are like, I don't know if I want to ask this question. It could be a dumb question. There are no dumb questions. Ask everything that you can think of that may be an issue, could be an issue. Full disclosure. Just give it up front. It'd be your best. It'd be your best thing you ever did buying a home.
Yeah. Well, they also say that lack of information makes you stupid or gives you limited choices.
Yeah.
So the more information you have and the more you can communicate, the more choices you probably have during the process if you ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Have you been married 5 times?
No. I'm a great communicator. That's all I'm saying.
I was just wondering.
I got more. I probably got more time in the marriage than anybody else here. It's a whole other story. It's not because of lack of communication. I'm just saying. All right. But the other side of that, when we talk about communication, there's a lot of different ways we could go with this. I'd probably say all those things you guys talk about are very crucial in the process. Being able to know or ask questions and put solutions in front of people. Okay. But at the same time, too, I'm going to leave with this caveat. You should never have a problem conveying information to your client if you have a solution, because you've asked all the right questions. Okay? And chances are, if you over communicated, it won't be the first time or the last time you're going to have conversations that come out of nowhere. Because we know life happens in a transaction. Life happens. People fail to communicate, but that doesn't mean we don't have to run away from it when it comes up our way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Always ask questions. And make sure you're understanding who you're communicating with in that process. Because if you're a type A and they're a type B, it's our job as real estate agents to match our client's personality or communication style so we can deliver information to them in a way in which communicates to them. It's not their job to find out how to communicate to you. So bring value, learn how to communicate, ask questions, and always, always, always be prepared with a solution.
Amen.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good enough?
Nah, outstanding.
All right.
No.
With that being said, make it a great day. We look forward to seeing you guys on the other side. And if you have questions, please communicate to us about things you'd like to hear us talk about going forward, because there's a million things we could talk about, but we're always looking for feedback. We're always looking for ways in which we can engage you, bring value, and try to make sure we're constantly growing, building upon our first conversation we had about what do you know.
Yep.
Always bring value, educating ourselves, trying to put ourselves in a better situation while still making ourselves uncomfortable. Because what you don't know, but what you do know, you do know. But the question comes down, what do you don't know?
Done.
Done.
Cut. Beautiful.